Continue through midnight Eastern time because they say the symbolism is it is midnight in America, given what has taken place this past week and with other police-involved shootings. So this crowd is made up of a very diverse group of people, both by race and by age. And again, the organizers were just stressing as they move to what is now being called an undisclosed location to remain in line and above all, to remain peaceful. And that has been the way this evening has progressed so far. No arrests, no incidents, moving orderly through the streets of downtown Atlanta, disrupting traffic, but then moving on. Anderson?
All right, Martin Savage, we'll continue checking with you. Elsewhere, while Charlotte has been rocked by protests and unrest this week, Tulsa has served as a counterpoint. Terrence Crutcher was shot and killed Friday night in Tulsa after his SUV broke down. He was 40 years old. The Tulsa Police Department released videos of the shooting on Monday. The images sparked intense but peaceful protests calling for charges against Betty Shelby, the officer who opened fire. Now that has happened. Sarah Seidner has the latest.
An officer turned suspect in Tulsa. Officer Betty Shelby turned herself into authorities. She was booked and bonded out. The district attorney is charging her with first-degree manslaughter, a charge that means a minimum of 4 years in prison, a maximum of life in prison if a jury convicts. Shelby's attorney told CNN by phone the DA's decision to charge her was a rush to judgment. But the family of Terrence Crutcher, a father of four, seen here in this police helicopter video, sees it much differently.
Is this a rush to judgment, as he says?
Well, if it was turned around and if it was you or I or anybody else that would have shot a police officer, then it wouldn't have been a rush to judgment. Get him. We need to get him. Throw away the key. But because it's an average Blow Joe, my brother, you know, a bad dude, oh, there's a rush to judgment. Shouldn't have been shot down. It's not a rush to judgment at all.
The reference to bad dude from someone in a police helicopter on the day of the shooting.
That looks like a bad dude.
Officer Shelby's attorney says his client didn't hear that comment, but feared for her life.
Based on her past experience and training, this person posed an immediate threat of harm to him or to her and everyone present. And she thought if she didn't take action right then, everyone would be in peril of serious bodily harm or death.
Officer Shelby's attorney says she thought Crutcher was reaching into his vehicle while refusing to comply with her orders to get on the ground. The Crutcher's attorney says he couldn't have reached into the vehicle because the window was closed. The district attorney's lead investigator says Shelby had already cleared that vehicle without finding a weapon. Court papers say she approached the vehicle and cleared the driver's side front and then proceeded towards the passenger side of the vehicle. And Crutcher's sister now telling CNN something that has not been revealed publicly before.
We clearly saw how slowly he was moving, and people don't know this about my brother. My brother was disabled. My brother had a prosthetic eye. My brother had hearing loss. You know, we have to ask Terrence over and over again because he can't hear.
Bad eyesight, poor hearing, and Crutcher says he was simply doing what he was taught to do by his father, attempting to put his hands on the car and wait for police. Instead, he was killed. He had just left school.
He wanted to make us proud. He wanted to do something bigger. He wanted to grow. He wanted to become a better person. He wanted to be better. And he didn't want this. He didn't ask for this. And so that's what I think about. Sorry. And I'm gonna miss him.
Sarah Seidner, CNN, Tulsa, Oklahoma.
A lot to discuss with the panel. Joining me again, David Klinger, Cedric Alexander, Van Jones, and Laura Coates. Laura, the affidavit in Officer Shelby's manslaughter charge said that she, quote, reacted unreasonably by escalating the situation and that she became, quote, emotionally involved to the point that she overreacted. Were you surprised that a charge came so quickly, less than a week after the shooting?
I wasn't surprised that a charge came so quickly, nor the actual charge that it was, because I would have been surprised had they charged her with first-degree murder or homicide, a much higher charge. That would have shown there was some type of premeditation and not kind of a deference to officers who don't intend necessarily to go in their daily tasks and commit murder. This was looked at as a lapse of judgment, a rush to judgment, ironically, as was discussed in the pre-video here. the person being judged for the rush judgment was actually Miss Shelby, and that is why she was charged. And think about it, Tulsa, this is an area where we already have a record where there's a proactive prosecutor involved in Oklahoma and Tulsa specifically, where you had volunteer officer Bates just a year ago,
right,
who was tried and convicted for the same charge for mistaking his gun for a taser. So I'm not surprised that we have a proactive prosecutor here.
David, it also says the charge that she was, quote, in fear of her life and thought that Mr. Crutcher was going to kill her. Couldn't that be used to justify deadly force?
She can raise that claim, but as I've said on other CNN shows, this is a stinker. It doesn't make sense. Now, there may be something that we're not seeing, because when the helicopter loops and you've got the vehicle in between the helicopter and where the shooting goes down, there could have been something happening, but there was nothing on that video that I saw that made much sense to me. From the way that the officers approached to the way that they retreated, it just, I'm befuddled.
What do you mean it's a stinker, it doesn't make sense? You mean it doesn't make sense that she shot?
It doesn't make sense to me. You should be able to handle something like this, where it's not a dynamic situation where someone's moving towards you. The person is in fact moving away. The arms are up. You should be able to figure out some way, unless he did something at that door where he's actually reaching in and arming himself. That would be an appropriate time to use deadly force. But short of that, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Cedric, what Crutcher's family told Sarah Seidner about him, that he only had one eye, he had poor hearing, does that factor into the case against Officer Shelby?
Well, she didn't know that coming up on him, of course. There was no way for her to know that. But, you know, this particular case, if she was indicted this quickly, I'm going to make the assumption that there was just clear evidence and probable cause very early on to suggest that this officer violated the law. I don't think it's going to be considered a rush to judgment. What I think it's going to be is not a delay in judgment, where the facts are there, it is clear, and I'm going to be confident enough that that district attorney made a decision based on the evidence that was presented to him, and it was whole, and it was done in a manner and a time frame in which they felt was appropriate.
And Van, as far as community reaction, just 3 days after the shooting, Tulsa authorities released the chopper video, the dash cam video from 3 different cop cars, audio of police radio traffic, 911 calls. I mean, we even hear that in the chopper, you know, somebody saying that guy looks like a bad dude, or words to those effect. The officer has been charged. Obviously, you don't want to bring charges just to mitigate a potentially bad reaction from protesters, but the differences between Charlotte and Tulsa do seem pretty stark.
Well, very stark, and again, you have to give some lenience here. I do think that because there's there are many more, it looks like many more officers involved, you may want to hold that videotape back a little bit to get a better outcome. But let me just say a couple things. One, both of these cases have something in common now, which is this idea of disability. It's apparently in one shooting, you have someone with a brain injury who can't comply. Another one, someone is hearing impaired, they can't comply. If you are black and disabled, another somebody is dazed after a car crash, maybe they can't comply. If you are African American and you cannot comply, deadly force will be applied against you, because the assumption is always you're a bad dude. That looks like a bad dude. So that is something I think we've got to start taking more seriously, how these factors come together. I also just want to, there's an elephant in the room here. This is a female police officer, and I just want to point out that sometimes you have a clash of stereotypes. You know, the bad dude and the panicked woman. And I just want to make sure that we do wait to get all the facts in here, because it could be that some officers are willing to throw another officer under the bus because she's a woman. I'm not saying I believe that. I just want to make sure that we're looking at all the facts here. There could be a clash of stereotypes. Nothing I saw justified that shooting. I think probably the other officers said it wasn't justified. That's why you got this charge. But you could have a clash of stereotypes.
It's good to look at every angle. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. Just ahead, we're going to shift gears, look ahead to Monday's presidential debate. What are Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump doing to prepare for their first face-off? What should they be doing? We'll talk to some experts ahead.